Welcome to the Unpacking It podcast with Bryce Johnson. It's a show that unpacks sports, faith, and life with intriguing guests from the sports and entertainment world. Enjoy inspiring conversations and thought-provoking interviews. You'll hear stories from people that will inspire, challenge, and encourage you. Now, from the Unpacking It studios in Charlotte, North Carolina, uniting sports fans everywhere, here is Bryce Johnson.
Right now, we are joined by San Francisco 49ers wide receiver Jordan Matthews. He was drafted by the Philadelphia Eagles in the second round of the 2014 NFL Draft after a record-setting career at Vanderbilt. He spent 4 seasons with the Eagles and 1 with the Bills, and during the offseason, he signed with the 49ers. Most importantly, Jordan is a husband, father, and follower of Jesus. Jordan, thanks so much for joining us on Unpacking It. How are you?
How you doing, brother? Doing well.
All right, doing great here, and glad to have you on. And so, first up, you've been experiencing OTAs with the 49ers. So how are things going so far in San Francisco, and why does it seem like the 49ers are the right fit at this point in your career?
Yeah, things have been going well. I had a couple teams that called, and they were all great organizations. I mean, a couple of those organizations, too, I knew coaches at. So, I'm all about relationships, and I'm always about a great fit. So those were factors that played in. But when it came to the 49ers, there was something else that I felt about this place that was just different. There's kind of an electricity around the organization right now. And I really liked how many young guys were in the wide receiver group. I knew I was going to be pushed, as a 27-year-old going into this year by guys that were younger, and I was excited about that. Last offseason I signed with the Patriots, and people were wondering why I would do that, because I was like, I really wanted to go into a situation where I felt like I had to work every single day to earn anything, and I wanted to be put in the toughest situation possible. I don't think there's anything tougher than signing with the Pats, and I think coming to a place like the 49ers where they are right now, I just know it's a big challenge, and I'm up for it.
Well, so some people may hear that and be surprised by that desire to be challenged. So where does that come from, and why do you embrace the challenge of having to prove yourself and having to fight, for a roster spot, for a starting spot, and all that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think lots of times people worry about those things because they look at situations kind of in the short term. I like to have a long-term view, but a very short-term process. And what I mean is I kind of like to begin with the end in mind. When I look at signing with hard teams, like when I signed with the Patriots last offseason, it wasn't strictly because, okay, I want to sign with this team so I could potentially win a Super Bowl. It was more so I knew it was no different than any other corporation. You can look at the Patriots the same way you look at Google or, Apple. They're a successful organization, and I wanted to see how a successful organization was run. That was definitely it. And I wanted to learn how to work my way up in a place where the environment is extremely competitive. A large part of that, too, is I know when it comes to my faith, when I'm put in a tough situation, I naturally depend on the Lord way more than when I put myself in easy situations where I feel like I can accomplish something on my own power. And so I'm always looking for opportunities to really challenge myself. And I know that the long-term effect of that is going to be something that I can be proud of, because I know football is not going to last forever. And I can take the skills that I've learned from playing in different places, a place like Philly where it's very high intensity, high pressure all the time because of how much the city loves their team. The Patriots, that type of organization where it's really hard to come up, but it's worth it in the end. Or the 49ers, an up-and-coming team that has great tradition. So they have that standard that's really high, and they're trying to get back to it. And I'm like, man, I want to be a part of something like that now, man. The people here are great. The culture here is amazing. I can't say enough about it. And now it's just about going and getting the wins. I know John Lynch, our GM, went on record saying, last year was okay, but we need some more finishers. That's what he felt about going into the draft and about free agency. He was like, we've got guys that have talent. We got to go get some finishers, and we got to produce finishers. And I'm like, there's a challenge. That's where, it's not just about how are you doing in May, how are you doing in, August, September, how are we going to do in December, January. February, and that's a challenge I'm up for.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that perspective from Jordan Matthews, wide receiver with the San Francisco 49ers. And I'd love to unpack kind of a few of your stops in your NFL journey. And you mentioned your time in New England where you went there with good intentions and this perspective of wanting to learn from them, but your time there was cut short and had an injury settlement. So what did you take away from your time there, despite it maybe not lasting as long as you anticipated?
Yeah, I took a lot of good things. I remember having conversations with Julian Edelman a lot and working with him, and he gave me a lot of good tips. He talked about reinventing yourself. I was like, how do you stay around, not just in the league for a long time, but with one organization? It's like it's one thing to be married to one person for a lifetime, but you're married to an organization. That means a lot of people feel a certain way about you over a lot of years. Like, that's really impressive. So guys like Matthew Slater, Julian Edelman, Tom Brady, like dudes that are able to stay with the organization that long because of their production, I was like, man, that's kind of cool. I want to learn how somebody does that. And Edelman just gave me some really good advice. He was like, you got to learn how to reinvent yourself. When he came into the league, I guess everybody kind of looked at him like, oh, he's the next Wes Welker, but he wanted to create his own lane. I feel like he's done that effectively.
Mm-hmm.
And, and I got to work with him a little bit when I was rehabbing, and I saw the difference. Like, we went to go throw one day, and I went out there with like a shirt, shorts, and cleats, and he brought this huge bag out there. He had on a helmet and shoulder pads just to run routes. And it was just us two and a quarterback.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, it's like this is the difference. This is what it looks like when you feel like today has got to be better than the last day. And so I just learned a ton about having a high standard and having to go try and live up to that every single day.
That's cool. Jordan Matthews, our guest right now on Unpacking It. And we'll spend a little more time talking about your time with the Eagles, but I did want to ask you about your one season in Buffalo. And so you're drafted by Philly. Yep. They end up trading you to Buffalo, and you end up dealing with injuries that year. So what was the takeaway, the experience like from your time in Buffalo?
Yeah, the Buffalo year was hard only because I was already injured when I got there. And that was the hardest part about it. Yeah, because I needed surgery long before I went to Buffalo, and I had got an opinion from a couple of doctors, and they both agreed that in about June, July, that I was going to need surgery before my fourth year. And so I was, at that time I was on the Eagles, so I knew I was like, I'm pretty comfortable with going into, a season with a team that I already know, even if they know that, I'm like 80%. Because if you know an offense, if you know a quarterback, if you know a system, there's a lot more you can play through. And because your coaches might take care of you during the week, the quarterback's going to know, like, okay, I know a route to hit you on. I know you're hurting today, so you can rest. Like, there's that understanding. But when you go to a new team, I don't care how good you are, you always feel like there's that process where you got to go prove yourself again to a new group of people. And when I got to Buffalo, I was already injured. And so when you're like having to put that type of stress on my body to try and prove something to a new organization, to a new city, while I was already in need of surgery, which is really difficult. It was a really difficult year. Yeah, man. And so like I ended up going on IR week 10 and people thought that like I got injured the week before. It was like, I needed this surgery in June,
Yeah.
Exactly. And so after that year, I got surgery on my left knee and right ankle. But I'm 100% now, and I've been good ever since. But just playing on that stuff that whole year was a challenge, man.
Wow.
Like every single day I woke up, I would put my feet on the ground. I'd be like, okay, am I going to be in pain today? Yep. All right. Still got to go practice. And so, yeah, that's how it was. And so I was really shelling myself pretty much, I think, when I was there, and it took me a long time to just get over being traded, being injured. And so that was a year I would really say where I was like really spiritually tested. There was one time specifically I can remember I was really encouraged. I listened to this sermon by Tim Keller. It's called When I Survey. It was about Paul's letter to the Ephesians. And he was just talking about I think it's the one to the Ephesians where he's talking about praying. He was praying for their inner man. I got to go check to make sure. I got to check. But he was talking about praying for their inner man because he knew that they were going through hard times on the surface. And I spend so much time, I realized, praying about my outward circumstances. And I forgot completely. I totally neglected actually saying, no, Lord, help me from the inside. Because you might be trying to stir up something inside of me right now that's going to help me in the long term. Like you might not even be interested right now in fixing the external stuff because the external stuff is probably for my benefit. It's definitely for my benefit. And so
Amen.
I definitely remember there was just one day I was on a bus listening to that sermon, and it really encouraged me. And I think that was kind of what gave me even the motivation to kind of suck it up, play as hard as I could until I needed to go get surgery. And then I had the motivation and patience to go into rehab the right way.
Wow. Gosh, Jordan Matthews, our guest right now on Unpacking It. Love that insight and just it's encouraging to hear all that God was doing in you while your circumstances were tough. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. And the challenge for us is embracing what God is doing in that season of life. And so we were just talking about that 2017 season where you're in Buffalo, you're battling injuries, God's really working in you. And so following that season, actually during that season, the Philadelphia Eagles end up winning the Super Bowl, and you were drafted by the Eagles. They traded you to Buffalo, and ultimately you had a quick stop in New England, but then you end up re-signing with Philadelphia for the 2018 season. So take me into that experience, the return to Philly, and what last season ended up being like for you personally.
I mean, it was cool. I'm not honestly want to make like too much of it. It was just I'd been rehabbing my hamstring for the last like 4 or 5 weeks, and I had the injury settlement with New England, and I kept my place in Boston because I had all intentions of signing back with New England once the injury settlement was up. If they would have wanted to bring me back, that was something that we thought was a possibility. And yeah, it was just week 2 after Mike Wallace got hurt that the Eagles ended up calling me, and they were like, hey, like, you know, we want you to come play Z for us and do a workout, and then want to sign you. And so at that point, I was like, well, I know the quarterback, I know the offense, I know the city really well. And so that's really why I went. Like, I never wanted to make like a big deal about it. Like, I wasn't about to do the whole like the return. That stuff, like, I could care less about that stuff.
Yeah.
I would say I got less attached to like the whole, I guess, hoopla and hype of the NFL after I got traded, because I realized like none of this stuff is guaranteed. So even though I was going back to the Eagles, it was still like, man, let me just kind of see what God's trying to do in this moment and just go work my butt off. It wouldn't have mattered who it was I was going back to. I didn't try and make it bigger than it was. Wow.
No, that's really cool. So along those lines, how has your NFL career really taught you about success and disappointment, and how your faith really, helps you deal with both and give you the proper lens to look through, just the reality of the ups and downs of the NFL?
Yeah, I would definitely say that my perspective has changed a ton about what I would want to put a ton of my focus in. Like when I was in Richmond, I had a lot of external focuses that I had. Like I would always worry about, okay, what's my marketing situation like? I wonder what my brand's like. Oh, let me send out the perfect tweet. Like things that make no sense and don't matter at all in the grand scheme of things. But I want to be like all the other receivers that I saw, and I want to be like all these people that looked like they were successful in the NFL. And then I got married. I started growing in my faith. I think it was around the Buffalo year, I actually finished my first stint of reading the whole Bible, and that was very impactful on me too.
Yeah.
And so just my whole perception of this whole thing like really changed. I was like, okay, this is just a part of life, but this is not life. And I know a lot of people say that. I know a lot of guys say that, but I'm serious though. Like it got to the point where I totally changed the whole way that I would approach this whole thing. Like if I was in the building for a long period of time before, it was because I was always doing stuff strictly just to get better at football. Now, I might spend an hour in the cold tubs just talking to guys on my team. And I'm like, this is just as productive as me working on catching the football, because at some point this is going to end, but the way I might encourage somebody, that might last a lifetime. And so just the whole way I guess I approach it really was different. I could care less if people know who I am. I actually would prefer that they don't. So, you know.
Why do you say that?
Just because it really doesn't matter. It's not real.
Yeah.
You know, it really isn't. Like, when I was the man coming out of Vanderbilt and the man in Philadelphia, you know, I couldn't go anywhere without somebody recognizing me. And that's cool. I would never complain about that, ever. Like, I'm not one of those athletes who's like, oh, like, you worked hard, you got famous. Like, there's something that comes out of it. But what I would say, what do I prefer? I could care less about it, because when I went to Buffalo, was injured, and ended the season with only 1 touchdown and 200 yards, I could go anywhere and nobody would even recognize. It was that quick. And then when I got released from the Patriots, it was even worse. I want to say I never got recognized, ever. Like, I was right back to being some regular, tall black guy walking down your street. And I was like, you know what? This is who I really am. So when I get back into the NFL, I'm never going to buy the lie again that I'm more than this. Like, I am still I'm still the young Jordan Matthews from Alabama, and I'm going to spend more time focusing on the things in my life that are constant. You know, my marriage to my wife, you know, my relationship with my family, my close friends, and ultimately my relationship with God. Because I know, like, those things aren't changing, especially if I keep my hope and faith in the Lord. And so I would just say it changed everything for me, how I relate to people. I used to be afraid to talk to executives because I thought they were so just above me. You know, now I look at it like, no, we work together.
Yeah.
So I'll see John Lynch or Kyle Shanahan, and I'm like, dude, my life isn't wrapped around whether I make a team or not anymore. You know, my life is wrapped around spreading the gospel and living a life that I feel like is representative of Jesus Christ. So I could talk to anybody now without fear.
Oh.
And I think it's way more freeing.
Jordan Matthews, our guest right now on Unpacking It, wide receiver with the San Francisco 49ers. And, man, that's a powerful statement and all that you shared there. Really appreciate that. And I was actually looking on your Twitter feed, and someone asked you, hey, what's your favorite Bible verse? And you said Galatians 1:10, which says, am I now seeking the approval of man or of God, or am I trying to please man? If I were still trying to please man, I would not be a servant of Christ. And so I think that sums up what you were just saying. What would you want to add anything just in regards to that verse specifically?
You know, I think that is by far my favorite verse. Is like my reality check verse. I think one thing that gets lost in the loop, though, whenever people read that verse, because on the surface, even people who don't kind of like read the Bible, they like that. They're like, oh yeah, like we shouldn't care about pleasing man, but you're man. You know, people forget about that. You're man too. You know, so I'm right there in the mix. You know, so when I say like, okay, every day when I wake up, am I going to be consumed with pleasing myself? Or with pleasing God and trusting that He is going to take care of me? So I'm right there in that mix with everybody else, because the quickest thing that I feel like we all do, the great like advice of the age, like I hear all my people my age talk about it, is you grow up and you always thinking, okay, I've got to do everything for other people's approval. Yeah. I got to do everything to either get famous or to get the A or to get my dad to finally be proud of me, or to get everybody in school to think I'm cool, or to get everybody on the college campus to know me. And then you get out of college, and then you realize, dang, none of that stuff was fulfilling. Oh, I got it. The main purpose in life is what makes me happy, and to give me pleasure, and to love myself. And I'm just like, you know, that sounds good, but even you aren't enough.
Wow.
Even that won't sustain you. And, you know, that's why I love the verse of Matthew when they ask Jesus, like, yeah, what's the greatest commandment? And he goes, you know, well, the greatest commandment is to love God and to love others, you know, and to love others the way you love yourself. It's like He never commanded you. He didn't command you to love yourself. You love God. That's going to take care of itself. And so that's like that way of thinking, I think sometimes it gets lost like in that loop. And I have to remind myself of that, because I can come into this building and say, you know what, I am not attached to what anybody in here ultimately thinks about me. I'm going to do what pleases God and know that that'll take care of what people say or people's perception of who I am. But the temptation that's always going to happen is, okay, what do I think about myself? Sometimes that I get in my own way. And so that's where I need the most prayer, and that's where I'm still growing in. And, but it's a process. It is truly a process. Do I know if I'll ever get there completely? I don't know, but thanks be to God that He has more grace,
That's right.
And so, but yeah, that's where I am with it right now.
Yeah, man, that's powerful. And I really hadn't taken it that direction before, but that's really convicting and strong, a strong word from Jordan Matthews right here on Unpacking It. And man, I could talk to you all day, but before we let you go, I did just want to ask you about your family, and just really cool to see how much you support your wife, and she's a professional soccer player and having some great success herself. And then so I want to ask you about her, but also you're a new dad, you have a son. And my wife and I were actually due in August with our first baby, and so it's going to be a girl. So I got to ask you some advice on just how you've handled, both of you being pro athletes and having a son and being able to navigate that.
Yeah, it's been great, man. As far as I would say everything that we've been able to go do. I mean, my wife playing for Jamaica. I mean, you can't pick a better country,
That's where we went on our honeymoon.
We go play, whenever she goes to play there, it's like, look, I don't care if y'all win a game, some good food down here. So, but no, I really do care about their success. I think they're going to do great in the World Cup. They got some great girls in their team. But at the end of the day, like I said, we're not really attached to that stuff anymore. This is just a fun ride, man. Like, we get to, after my last day of minicamp, I get to hop on a plane 2 days later and go out to France to go watch my wife, play the sport she loves on the biggest stage. I tell her all the time, like, you have no pressure, because, me and God, like, we love you regardless. And so it's just, the ride is just fun, getting to experience new places. Like, I never would have, like, at this point in my career, at this point of, like, where I am in life, like, traveling still, like, gives me anxiety. Like, when I think about, like, traveling, I'm like, oh, I got to get packed. I got to worry about this. I got to worry about this. Boarding fast. How much is it going to cost? Where am I going to stay? What about the language barrier? But it's different when your wife is like, well, I have a camp in Jamaica and I need you to come to watch our baby. It's like, well, I got no choice. And you realize how easy planning some of that stuff is and getting it in motion. And when you just do it, it's like, oh, that wasn't that bad. And then you get there and you're like, man, I'm so glad we did this. I'll even give you one that's like, it's not even going to seem like a big deal to you, but she had a game in Utah a couple months ago, and this is for her NWSL league. And I'm going to be honest, I don't think I ever would have just thought to myself, let me go visit Salt Lake City, Utah. I just don't think didn't think the city was cool. I just don't think that I ever would have thought in my mind as a kid from Alabama, let me get a plane ticket and go to Utah and check it out. Man, I went and I loved it. The food was great. The mountains, it was so peaceful. Like, the whole time, I felt so connected with the Lord, just out there driving around, looking at the scenery, just amazing, just creation. I literally texted my wife. I was like, babe, thank you for working hard, following your dreams, and, like, being able to help me experience this. I remember my mom, when she was leaving Jamaica, because she came out there to help us with the baby, and she was taking a bus, a taxi from OTA Rios to Montego Bay to fly out.
Yeah.
And I remember my mom texting me and Shayna in a group meet and was just like, thank y'all so much, especially you, Shayna, for dreaming so big, bigger than I ever dreamed, and helped me see something like Jamaica. Wow. And I mean, I was about to, like, cry. You know what I mean? I'm just like, wow, like, and my mom is a beast. Like, she's done so much for my family, like, hardworking. Whenever we traveled, she was always the person that would plan stuff. Shout out to my dad, but my mom did all the work. And he would say the same thing. But it was just so crazy, like, to see, like, man, like, baby, like, you worked this hard, and look like with what God gave you, you put that to work, and now look at type of things we're able to experience because of your fortitude and your dedication. And so that's just so cool, man. I'm so proud of her. We're kind of in the moment right now too. So I think it's like always cool. We remind ourselves like, yo, in like another 10 years, we're going to be out of this moment. And all we're going to do is be able to talk back about it. So we're in it right now. Let's go all out. Let's have a good time. And I think little JoJo, he'll be proud of it too when he starts asking us questions about what we were doing when we were 20 years old. It'll be some fun stories to tell him. Yeah, that's good.
Man, that's so awesome. And yeah, it's just such an encouragement to hear you talk about your wife so fondly and just how proud of you that you are of her. And man, it's just really cool. And so I'll just ask you this. So what's one quick word of wisdom for me and any other kind of soon to be dad or new dad out there listening today?
Oh man. I'll be honest, you're going to be taking care of your wife a lot more than the baby.
That's cool.
So that's one thing. And I think that's pivotal early on to keep that perspective, because it's going to smack us dead in the face when our kids turn 18 and they leave the house and we still got to be married to our wife.
That's right.
I truly believe, and this is just, and I've seen it. And so I'm not just throwing something out there. They talk about how many times people raise children, and then when the second their kids leave, they're like, who am I even married to right now? Like they spend so much time saying, okay, it's all about the kids, all about the kids, all about the kids. And we neglected the fact that like, we didn't choose our kids. We chose our wife.
That's right.
That's right. Yep. This is what God brings together. Let no man separate. Like that's the bond that we got to always make sure that we're focused on. And I noticed that like when early on, especially when Josiah was first born, I was surprised at how much I really couldn't do for him. I couldn't feed him because he wasn't on, formula yet. So Shayna had to feed him. When it came to sleeping, he felt way more comfortable sleeping like on Shayna because he was used to being inside of Shayna. So that felt more like home. And so, the first 3 months, I was like, gosh, things kind of easy. But what I realized was like, okay, hold on. Like the person that was to be taken care of right now is her. I need to be making sure that she's okay mentally, physically, spiritually. And then once Josiah gets a little bit older, then I feel like my main responsibility is being that example. And I feel like as long as I'm that example early on, once he starts watching me and trying to imitate me, then that's going to be where I feel like my fatherhood would be the most effective.
Wow. No, it's so strong. I love it. It's encouraging to me. And man, again, I could talk to you all day. This has been one of the best interviews we've done in the last 7 years. So I really appreciate it, and hope we can do this again. And I know you got to get to practice, so have a great day on the field, and really appreciate just what you stand for and your heart for the Lord, and just been a really encouraging interview today. So thanks so much for joining us here on Unpacking It.
No, Bryce, thank you, man. Hey, just stay in the fight. I know in the media it's always hard to be in the face, man, because I know everybody's looking for hot button issues, and sometimes the last thing people want to hear about is somebody's faith in Christ. But you're doing it the right way. I appreciate the time. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. Really appreciate that. Man, he's Jordan Matthews, wide receiver for the San Francisco 49ers, joining us here on Unpacking It.
For more information about the show, our events, and other resources, visit unpackinit.com. That's unpackinit.com. We hope you are encouraged, inspired, and challenged by what you heard today. To support our show and Unpacking It Ministries with a financial gift, visit unpackinit.com/donate. We look forward to unpacking sports, faith, and life with you again next week.